former D.C. Metropolitan Police officer, and author of Hold the Line, The Insurrection and One Cop's Battle for America's Soul. Officer Fanone, I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today. Please tell me your thoughts on this third anniversary.
All right, folks. So today is obviously the anniversary of 1/6, and you know what that means. You know it means the media is going to spend an entire day gaslighting you into believing that what was ultimately on Jan 6, 2021, some unrest by a small portion of a very large crowd of people. It was a mostly peaceful protest. Haha. Remember that word? A mostly peaceful protest, by definition, was actually an armed insurrection against our government. It was a coup to overthrow American democracy. It was the worst attack on our country since 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. In fact, many have argued it was actually worse than both of those things combined. We've been quite familiar with the same exact circus act over the past couple of years, and one could expect it's not going away anytime soon because it is obviously election year. Democrats have nothing to run on. Joe Biden has run this country very terribly into the ground. He's a very unpopular president. And so the only thing they have, and the only thing actually when Joe Biden made his first 2024 campaign speech yesterday, the only argument they have is January 6th and repeating the same exact misinformation lie about the armed insurrection against our capital or whatever they're saying. So I figured in the spirit of Jan 6, it would be very appropriate to react to at least one of these unhinged mainstream media breakdowns. But I found it hard to really single out which CNN or MSNBC segment do I really want to react to, because I was scrolling their channels. There's a bunch of them. You know, the whole day, all they're talking about is Jan 6 this, Jan 6 that. It's almost as if the entire thing is sort of organized, a psyop in some senses, but I digress. But I think I found ultimately the most hilarious segment here, where this MSNBC anchor brings on a former Capitol Police officer who actually wrote a book. Okay, they wrote a book about this whole thing. And just see for yourself, the guy actually starts crying about our democracy. It was such a terrible day. See, you got to see for yourself. Okay, so I'm just play it and we'll talk about it.
Own gun. Despite having lived through that harrowing assault and living with the consequences of that trauma, Fanone has not stopped defending our democracy. He has sought to hold those responsible accountable, and he has an urgent message for the American people as the 2024 presidential campaign season gets underway. Fanone told HuffPost, quote, ultimately...
So long story short, this guy is a Capitol Police officer, and he was there on January 6th, and he wrote a book about it. Okay. Now, as I will suspect, and maybe you'll agree with me if you see the interview, I mean, to me, the moment someone gets a book deal, not in all cases, but in many ways, it's kind of what book deals are. It's a grift, right? And so I'm immediately like, okay, what's really going on there? But check this out, okay? Check this out.
You, the American voter, will be the last line of defense when it comes to preserving democracy as we know it and ensuring the peaceful transfer of power.
Oh, my God.
And it's that serious. Joining me now in studio is Michael Fanone, former D.C. Metropolitan Police officer, Courage for America council member, and author of Hold the Line, The Insurrection and One Cop's Battle for America's Soul. Officer Fanone, I'm going to try to get through this.
He's actually crying. He's actually crying. Hold on. Let's rewind. Sorry, I accidentally skipped too far. Hold on.
Officer Fanone, I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
What a hero.
Please tell me your thoughts on this third anniversary.
We are still in the midst of the same fight that began on January 6th, 2021. And we have a lot at stake in this country. And I think that it deserves every American's attention.
You know, Donald Trump continues to...
So dramatic. Mr. Officer, thank you for saving our democracy on January 6th. You're such a... Yeah, he's such a hero, right? I mean, the bravery, okay? Like, frankly, this man should be regarded... This man should be regarded as a war hero. I mean, what did he do on January 6th? I don't know, like tear gas some grandmas or, tell people to leave the Capitol or something. Borderline war hero. Give him the Medal of Honor. Why don't you give him the Medal of Honor? It's so ridiculous. And the guy is crying. The guy's crying like this guy like saved his life or you saved our democracy on January 6th. So 2 things, okay? When I look at the actual Capitol Police officer who wrote this book and just the way he's speaking about it, look, I'm not really here to try to read into people's motives. However, you consider this guy has a book deal. He's running around making a bunch of money off of this. And the way he talks about it, he sounds like he doesn't really actually care about any of it. Seems to me like it's a big grift. He saw, hey, I'm a Capitol Police officer that was there on January 6th. I tear gassed grandmas or whatever I did, and hey, a bunch of stupid liberals would actually buy a book if I just wrote a book, saying very vague, generic things. I'll have ChatGPT rewrite me the CNN line about saving democracy on January 6th. And so, I'm not saying he's a grifter, but I would be pretty suspectful that he is. Now, I can't exactly knock the hustle. Living in DC is very expensive. The actual job of being a Capitol Police officer probably sucks in many ways. So, he's out here hustling. He's taking everyone along for a ride. I respect it. Okay, I respect the hustle. Now, on the flip side, the anchor here who is literally crying. Okay, I think the assumption of most people there would be that, it's just a performance art, right? He's acting. But, to me, to some degree, perhaps he is sort of acting, but also at the same time, I really do think that if you tell yourself something over and over again, even if you initially know that it is a lie, you will eventually come to believe it. I believe that, and that is actually the power of words and the power of repeating yourself sometimes. So in my eyes, I actually do think that some of these media people, maybe at first they thought the whole insurrection attack on our democracy narrative was a bunch of nonsense, but don't also underestimate the power of words and the power of people actually deluding themselves into believing something that is completely ridiculous and wrong by just telling them themselves over and over again and coping about it. So, that's my instant reaction to this. But yeah, you saved our democracy. Yeah. Okay, let's keep watching here.
Defend the insurrectionists, as he did at a rally in Iowa last night. Listen to this.
He's still crying.
Those J6 hostages going to jail for 20 years and 18 years and 12 doctors, lawyers, carpenters, electricians, truck drivers. It's one of the saddest things. It'll go down as one of the saddest things in the history of our country. And they went there to protest a rigged election.
Officer Fanone, how...
And that's all true because there are a lot of people who were arrested or, dealt with legal issues and all this stuff over January 6th that either did things that were very nominal or, in some cases, this is known, were led into the building and thought they were allowed to be there. And then the government snatched them up afterwards. So, that's all very real. And you look at the conditions they were being treated at, especially in that DC jail, a lot of them were kept in solitary confinement and all this stuff. These are all real and serious questions. But let's see what, these 2 circus clowns have to say about that.
Damaging is it for Trump to label those violent rioters who were criminally charged and convicted as hostages? The man who attacked you with that stun gun was sentenced to more than 12 years in prison.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, you got to think about those individuals that received those lengthy sentences. They did so because, A, they engaged in an insurrection, but their actions that day were violent, and that violence, excuse me, was directed towards law.
A reminder that a riot is not an insurrection, okay? It's just not the case. I don't know what else to say.
Law enforcement officers. And so, you know, I think it's clear that they deserve the sentences that they received. But by Donald Trump referring to them as hostages and speaking about them sympathetically, he's lending his authority as the former president to their actions. And he's telling Americans, his supporters, that I'm going to continue to support you and I'll do everything I can. And if I become president, I'll even pardon you if you can commit acts of violence on my behalf.
What's your response?
Sounds a lot like BLM. I know everyone was saying it in their head. Just want to say that out loud.
To Republicans, particularly those Republicans who responded to the Washington Post University of Maryland poll, who are growing more sympathetic to the insurrectionists?
I don't know what to say to them, and quite frankly, I don't think there is anything to say. They've made their decision. You know, we're 3 years out from the January 6th insurrection. We had the benefit of a bipartisan January 6th Select Committee investigation, which really rolled out
Okay, I think you guys basically get the idea. Blah, blah, blah. You know, same old thing. I just think it's funny how utterly dramatic these people are about what actually happened. But I want to shift now the discussion to Joe Biden himself, because when I said at the beginning of the video, it's election year, expect this rhetoric to ramp up, that wasn't merely speculation on my part, because actually yesterday, Joe Biden did his first campaign speech of 2024. So it does seem to be like Joe Biden is actually going to run and be the nominee for the Democrats in 2024, if this is what's happening right now. But that's besides the point. Listen to what he said about it. And, you know, his entire 2024 launch speech, you would think at this point he's the incumbent president. So most successful incumbents, of course, would say, well, look, our country is prospering and, you know, I have this on my record, that on my record. If you want to keep things the way they are, you know, vote for me, whatever. But listen to his first campaign speech. The entire thing was the same old rhetoric about January 6th and democracy and all this. Listen for yourself.
Trump's assault on democracy isn't just part of his past. It's what he's promising for the future. He's being straightforward. He's not hiding the ball. His first rally for the 2024 campaign opened with a choir of January 6th insurrectionists singing from prison on a cell phone, while images of the January 6th riot played on a big screen behind him at his rally.
Wait, riot? I thought it was an insurrection. Those really aren't the same thing. Anyways.
Can you believe that? Today, I make this sacred pledge to you: the defense, protection, and preservation of American democracy will remain, as it has been, the central cause of my presidency.
Benji,
okay, so as you can see, you're going to be hearing this stuff all year long, because that is, and if you listen to the rest of the speech, that's basically all there is to it. That is Joe Biden's 2024 campaign pitch. Hey, look, I've been a terrible president, but something vague, you know, democracy's on the line because Donald Trump or something like that. Again, why is this? He has nothing to run on. So that's very predictable. And so, I'm not surprised by that at all. Here's what I find so ironic about that approach, though, right? This idea of basically constantly fear-mongering about Trump and the right wing by comparing it more or less. I mean, let's just say it this way. What are they really doing? And they have done this in the past. They're basically trying to say, well, you need to be scared of fascism or authoritarianism or whatever, because the conservatives are the Nazis or something, and Trump is the Hitler or something, and therefore blah, 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 vote for us, and fearmonger about the other side and what they're going to do. And what I find so screwed up about that whole dialect, about that whole worldview, about this constant fear mongering of fascism, which, by the way, I would argue in many ways is perpetuated by our school system and mass media and what they taught you about the history of fascism and ideologies like that, is the whole discussion misses the fundamental question of what caused fascism or Nazism or Hitler or whatever example they want to raise to rise in the first place. Like, why did these ideologies become so popular? Why did these leaders become so popular? Of course, what we were sort of taught in the school system, I don't know, at least, was like, well, they just like rose out of nowhere. You know, Hitler just came to power because he was charismatic and he brainwashed people. And it's like, that's not entirely the whole story. The true story here is what happens when you destroy a country, when you destroy a society, when you significantly degrade people's quality of life, like, say, I don't know, make inflation so unbearable that people can't raise families, when you beat down a country's national pride, destroy its history, destroy its legacy, whatever it is. The sheer fact of the matter, again, is that when you run a country into the ground as a political establishment, is people naturally turn to political extremism. That's the truth of the matter, okay? And this is true of basically every coup and revolution in history. Sometimes it's a left-wing reaction, like communism. Sometimes it's a right-wing reaction, like the examples they always want to bring up. But the fundamental story is, of course, the same, which is when a current political system starts to fail or it does not work for the people, naturally people will strive to overthrow that. Now, for the record, I am against that. Okay, I am against extremism. I do not want to see this country go to the place of, you know, having to deal with all that different stuff. However, you know how you avoid that? Do you know how, and I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry, so stick with me here. Do you know how you avoid the extreme of like autocrats, whether they're right-wing or left-wing, rising to power in the United States? Do you know how you do that? You can't fearmonger your way into preventing that. You can't, you know, just scream with a senile old 81-year-old man about democracy and expect to do that. No, the way you preserve the current political system is to make the current political system work for the people. Okay, if Americans feel like in the next few decades that, hey, the country is working for me, you know, the American dream is still alive, it's still a nice, happy country, then people on the left or the right will not turn to extremism. However, okay, if you do what our political leaders have done for the past couple of decades and like Joe Biden seem like they still want to do, which is run this country into the ground, which is make the average ordinary life of an American significantly worse, and then just demagogue you and fearmonger at you if you try to call that out, then inevitably, like, I don't know if that tactic will work in 2024. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping the fearmongering about Trump is not successful and that Trump wins. But if they do manage to do that, if they do manage to strike up the American public with this fearmongering, that can only go so long. Because eventually there will come a breaking point, right? Where sort of, you know, the people are just done with the lies and they say, actually, you establishment, you, the people running our country, are not doing a good job. And we're going to have a reaction to this. And who knows what happens at that point? Again, I want to avoid that. Okay, I want to avoid that. That's why I want Trump, for instance, in 2024, to win as the rightly elected president and fix the country, or at least get the country on the right path. I don't think he's going to fix it overnight, but steer us in the right direction, right the sinking ship, so that way we don't have to deal with like the collapse of the American political system or an authoritarian, totalitarian, whatever, something like that, right? But again, I hope my point here made sense, but the irony of Joe Biden saying all this stuff is that what he's doing with the country, the way he's running it into the ground and making it so hard for people to live, that is what drives the push for political extremism. That is what drives Americans to lose faith in the system as it currently exists. And so the whole point here is, if you, I'm looking at you, Biden, I'm looking at the political establishment in general, truly, which you, I don't know if you do or not, but truly want to avoid some type of authoritarian overthrowing of American democracy, then the tactic is not to demagogue people. The tactic is instead to prove to people that actually your twisted idea of quote unquote American democracy is worth preserving. And it would be worth preserving if, hey, people felt like they lived in a safe and stable and happy community and, the country wasn't collapsing all around them. But the longer they feel like it is, the longer your idea that, we need to defend democracy by voting for you is going to collapse in many people's eyes. And so that's all to say that this is a bunch of crap that they're throwing out, but it's no surprise that this is the tactic that they're going to use in 2024. I'm just here to hope that it ultimately does not work and does not succeed, because again, this is all distraction from the fact Joe Biden has no political record to run on, and I think even his consultants kind of sat down and told him, hey, you're very unpopular on basically every issue, right? Economy, foreign policy, domestic policy. So let's try to take an alternate angle here. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work because you're the incumbent. You have to actually defend your record. But with that said, folks, let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section down below. Do you think this is going to be the Democrats' campaign strategy for 2024? Do you think it's going to work? Let me know about all of that in the comment section down below. And until next time, Alpha Moves Only. God bless. Have a very good day and peace.